Okay, here's a video for 7.5. This is practice A, and we're solving rational equations. So we're solving equations that have fractions in them. So I'll do 7.5. We're going to do 1 through 13. So you can see that I crossed out 14 down here. So let's start out. It tells us on the first three exactly what to use. It says we are supposed to use cross multiplying. Okay, so let me center this so that we can see it good. Okay, there you go. Right up there. All right, so let's look at the first three. Cross multiplying. I'm going to circle or box that just so we know that that's what we're supposed to be doing. And that means we're going to multiply diagonals. Those two are going to get multiplied. Those two are going to get multiplied, okay? Now, to multiply the 3 times the x minus 2, it's like a parentheses, and we have to distribute. So it would be 3x minus 6. That's one side. And 1 times 4x is just 4x. And so that's just a simple cross multiplying. I would subtract 3x on both sides. And then you get negative 6 equals x, and that one's actually finished. So that's how you're going to cross multiply. You're going to distribute if you have to. If you don't, just multiply them. Number 2, it's going to take us distributing twice. So this is like a parentheses. This is like a parentheses. So I am going to do number 2 up here so you can see it. I'm going to do 6 times x and 6 times 2. So I'm going to get 6x plus 12. And then I'm going to do 4 times x and 4 times negative 2. So I'm going to get 4x minus 8. Now we can just solve that like a regular equation. I would subtract the 4x to keep my x term positive. And that means I'm going to have to subtract 12. So the 12s will cancel. The 4x's will cancel. I'll be left with a 2x and a negative 20. Because when I combine negative 8 and negative 12, I get negative 20. And if I divide by 2, you're going to get x is negative 10. Number 3 is, this is the easy part, 3 times x and 3 times negative 5. That's going to give you 3x and a positive 15, because negative times negative is positive. The harder part is when you have to multiply the x minus 5 and the x plus 1. We're going to actually have to do FOIL on that one. So up here at the top, I'm going to show you how to do that, FOIL. So x plus 1, x minus 5. Just to remind you of how to do FOIL, you're going to multiply the first terms. That's the f in the word FOIL. So x times x is x squared. And then the O is outside terms, so that's a negative 5 times an x, so we just put negative 5x. The I is for inside terms, so that's negative 1, or 1 times x is just 1x, positive 1x, or just positive x. And then the L is for the two last terms. 1 times negative 5 is negative 5. Now we can put these middle terms together, so you get x squared. Actually, let me write it next to our equation. So it's going to be x squared minus 4x minus 5. Okay, so now that you've got an x squared in the problem, the other ones didn't, but this one does, you're going to need to get it equal to 0. So we're going to have to subtract the 3x and subtract the 15 and combine that with our like terms. So that way we have a 0 on one side, and on the other side we'll get x squared minus 7x minus 20. And we always try factoring first, because factoring would be the easiest. This negative 20 goes on top of our x. And we're going to multiply to get negative 20. the -7 goes on the bottom of the x. That's the middle term that we want to add to get -7. So I'm going to say 10 and 2. Now 10 and 2 would subtract give us 8. 5 and 4 would subtract to give us 1. And 1 and 20 don't work. So you know what? That's not going to factor. We're going to have to use the quadratic formula. A is 1, B is -7, and C is -20. We're going to have to put it into that quadratic formula that we used the other day. Or actually, we haven't used that. We used it first semester. But I'll rewrite the quadratic formula here so you remember it. It's x equals opposite of b plus or minus, and then you got the big square root, and in the big square root you have b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Don't have to memorize it. It'd be nice to know it, but if you have a computer and you just Google quadratic formula, it comes right up. So we're going to put in the opposite of b. Now in our equation, b is -7. You can see that right here. B is -7. So we want the opposite of that. We want +7. Plus or minus, and then the square root of -7 squared is b squared minus 4 times a is 1 and c is -20. All over 2 times 1 because a is 1. Okay, so that's just filling in our quadratic formula. Now we are going to just simplify it. So 7 plus or minus square root of 49 plus 80, because -4 -20 is +80, all over 2. So simplify one more time. 7 plus or minus square root of 129 all over 2. That's actually as low as you can get because you can't break down the square root of 129. So number 3, we had to solve it with the quadratic formula. Couldn't factor it, unfortunately. All right, so if you need to stop the video and to get that copy down, you can. Your first assignment is just to copy these notes. So if you just copy those down, you'll have it. Okay, we're looking at 5 now, or 4. So far in baseball, you pitched 47 strikes, 61 pitches. Solve the following equations to find X, the number of consecutive strikes you need to pitch to raise your strike percentage to 80%. So we want it to be 80 out of 100. That's why the first question's 8, or first one is 80 out of 100. And the second one is we want to add the same number to the top and the bottom to get it to equal 80 out of 100. So let's just see that we're going to distribute there. So we're going to want our calculator because 80 times 61 is a big number. So let's get the Desmos. Well, let's put /scientific. We want the actual scientific calculator because we're going to multiply 80 times 61. 80 times 61, you get 4,880. Okay, so let's go back to here. So I'm going to go this over here, 4,880. And that's the 80 times 61. We also have to do 80 times x. So that would just be 80x. 80x. Then we got to do 47 times 100. Well, that's easy, 4,700. And then we got to do, so it's 100 times 47, it's 100 times x, so 100x. All right, now if we want to keep the x positive, we're going to subtract the 80x on both sides. That means we've got to subtract the 4,700 on both sides. So the 4,700s cancel out, the 80s, x's cancel out. You're left with 180 equals 20x. And when you divide by 20 on both sides, sorry, there you go. So I subtracted the 80x on both sides. And then I subtracted the 4700 on both sides. Canceled out the 80x's, canceled out the 4700s. These two combined gave me the 20x. These two subtracted gave me 180, and I divided, you're going to get 9. So you would need to throw 9 strikes in a row to move your percentage up to 80%. So that was number 4. Okay, number 5 is asking us to identify the lowest common denominator. In other words, what would allow us to wipe out all the denominators? So what can I multiply by to get rid of these denominators? Well, this first fraction has an x minus 2. So I would need an x minus 2 so that I could cancel those out like that. Those would now cancel. One's on the top, one's on the bottom. Okay, I'm going to put it back though. The second fraction has an x, so I would need an x because then I could cancel this x with this x, top and bottom. And the third fraction also has an x, but I can cancel that x with that x, so I don't need another one. So there's my lowest common denominator right there. If I multiplied every fraction by that, all of the denominators would cancel out. In number 6, I need an x plus 5 to cancel out this denominator. And I need an x to cancel out the other denominators. So x plus 5 and just x. Number 7. Now we're going to put that into play. What could I multiply by to get rid of my two denominators? Well, I need to multiply by a 3 to get rid of the first denominator, and I need to multiply by an x to get rid of the second one. But to keep it equal, you got to multiply everything by 3x, all of them. So the 3 cancels here, but you still have 4 times x. So you got 4x. Here the x cancels, but you still have 3 times 2, which is 6. And you don't have anything to cancel there, so you just get 12x. So we'll subtract 4x on both sides. And you get 6 equals 3x. And when you divide by 3, you get 2 equals x. Okay, so that's that answer right there. Number 5, you're going to need a 2x. Okay, and you're also going to need a 4 to cancel out the 4, but you've already got a 2, so I think if we multiplied it by just another 2, that would give us 4x. So I'm thinking that if we just multiply everything by 4x, a 4 and an x, a 4 and an x, a 4 and an x, 2 can go into 4 2 times, x can go into x. So 2 times 5, you're going to get a 10. 4 can go into 4, you're just going to have a 1 times an x. And then 2 goes into 4 2 times, x goes into x. So you're going to end up with just a 9 times a 2, which is an 18. And if you subtract 10 on both sides, you get x equals 8. Okay, so that was 8. Number 9, we're going to need more room now. So this is where you really got to use your own paper because we don't have enough room on here for all of them. Okay, so I'm going to do 9 and 11 way over here in this area. Okay, so let's start with 9. Okay, so I'm looking at those fractions, and I need to multiply by x minus 3 to get rid of the first fraction. And I need an x to multiply to get rid of that last fraction. So I need to multiply everything by x minus 3 times x minus 3 times x by all 3 of these fractions, all 3 of them, okay? So all 3 of them have to be multiplied to keep it equal. So what happens is the first one, x minus 3's cancel, but the x is still there. You've got to distribute it, x times x and x times negative 2. So you're going to get x squared minus 2x. I know it's a little crammed in here. The second one, you're just multiplying the 3x and then the x minus 3. So you're just getting the 3, the x, and the x minus 3 all together. You're going to have to distribute that. Okay, well, we'll do that at the end here. And the last one, you're going to get rid of the x's. So you're going to need to distribute 2x squared minus 6x. So equals 2x squared minus 6x. That's what's left over. Okay, so here we go. Let's distribute. So we have x squared minus 2x plus 3x squared minus 9x equals 2x squared minus 6x. Combining like terms and subtracting on both sides and adding 6x to both sides because we need to get it equal to 0, so these are all going to cancel out and give me 0. Let's see, x squared, we have 4 of them, 1 here, 3 more here, and that's 4 minus 2, so you're going to have 2x squareds. Negative 2x, positive 6x, and negative 9x. So negative 2x with negative 9x is negative 11. But when you add 6x, you're actually subtracting and getting a negative 5x. And then that's it. So now we can take out an x because we can take out a GCF. So we can take a GCF out of here. They both have an x in it. This one has x and this one has x. But this one has x squared. So if I take away one x's, I'm still going to have one left. So this is going to be 2x. These x's just cancel, and you get minus 5. So one impossible solution is 0, okay? Because if x is 0, then the whole thing works. The other solution is adding 5 to both sides. 2x equals 5, dividing by 2. You're going to get 5 halves. Okay, now we need to go back and look at our original problem, because the bottom of those fractions is important. Okay, so you see how the x minus 3, so 3 is not going to work. I can't have a 0 on the bottom of a fraction. That is never allowed in math. So 3 does not work, but that's not one of my solutions, and I can't have a 0 answer. So what that means is this 0 that we got for one of our answers does not work. You got to get rid of that one. It's not a solution. The only answer that's correct is the 5 halves. So this is the one that worked. The other one didn't work because you're not allowed to have any zeros on the bottom of fractions. No zeros allowed at all. Okay, let's look at 10, I mean. I think I'm going to rewrite number 10 just so it doesn't get so messy for you, and maybe that'll help. So 4 over x minus 5 plus 1 over x equals an x minus 1 over x minus 5. Okay, so the good news is 2 of them have x minus 5s. That's actually really good news. That will really help a lot, because now all we have to do is multiply everything by x minus 5, and that's going to get rid of 2 of my denominators right there. It's going to get rid of the first one, and it's going to get rid of the last one. Now, to get rid of the middle denominator, I got to multiply everything by x as well. So that's going to cancel this guy out. So what's left over here is just a 4 times an x. What's left over here, if you distribute a 1, it stays the same. So it's just going to be plus x minus 5. And what's left here is x times x and x times negative 1, which is a bummer because that gives us x squared, and now it's quadratic. X squared minus x minus 1x, which is just x. So that means we are going to need to get it equal to 0 so that we can solve the quadratic. That's 5x, so we're going to subtract 5x, and we're going to add 5. I think we can factor this one, though, so make it a little easier on ourselves. 0 equals x squared minus 6x plus 5. I do think factoring will work on this one. Multiply to give us a 5 and add up to 6. Add up to negative 6. I'm thinking negative 3 times, no, sorry, negative 5 times negative 1. Multiply them, you get positive 5. Add them, you get negative 6. So x minus 5 and x minus 1 are your two factors. Those are the two numbers that are on the sides of your x. Those are called the factors. They go in the two parentheses. Now, what we want to do is find out what's going to make each parenthesis 0, because that's our solution. That's going to be a 5, because 5 minus 5 is 0. What's going to make that a 0 is a 1. So 5 and 1 are your two solutions. But look at the problem. If I stick a 5 in there, 5 minus 5 gives me a 0 on the bottom. Not allowed. I can't have 5 as an answer. The only solution that works is the 1. So the 5 won't work. The 5 will make an undefined fraction because the 5 would make a 0 on the bottom. So that just does not work. Okay, let's look at 11. I'm going to do 11, down here at the bottom. Okay, because we're not doing 14. So let's do 11 right here. Okay, so we've got 8 over x. I don't think we're going to do 12. 8 over x plus 3 equals x plus 8 over x minus 4. Okay, so to get rid of the first fraction, we're going to need to multiply everything by an x. Second one doesn't have a fraction. It's just a 1 on the bottom, so we don't need to multiply anything to get rid of a 1. Third fraction has an x plus minus 4, so we're going to have to multiply everything by x minus 4. That would be your lowest common denominator. So when I multiply this by the first fraction, the x's will cancel. But you're still going to have to distribute the 8 times the x, which would be 8x, and the 8 times negative 4, which is negative 32. 3 times x, and then you got to multiply. Then you got to distribute that. So 3 times x will be 3x times x is going to be 3x squared. You got a 3, you got an x, you got an x. So that's 3x squared. 3x times negative 4 is negative 12x. Because 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. And here the x minus 4's cancel, so you're going to just do x times x and x times 8. So x squared is x times x plus 8x. We have quadratic again because there's got an x squared in it, so we're going to have to get it equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract my x squared to keep x squared positive, and I'm going to subtract 8x. So I have 0 on the right. What I got to figure out is what's on the left side here. So I've got these two that are going to go together and be called 2x squared. And then I've got these two, which are negative 20x's. When I combine it with a positive 8x, I actually subtract them because negative and positive, you got to subtract when they're different. So negative 20 plus 8 would be negative 12x. I would pull out a greatest common factor. I could divide them both by 2 and by x. 2 can go into both numbers, x can go into both numbers. So that's going to be called my GCF. What's left over, the 2's will cancel. 1x cancels with 1x, so you just have an x left. Here, 2 goes into 12 6 times, and the x's cancel, so you just have a minus 6. Okay, so what's going to make this a 0 is a 0. What's going to make this one a 0 is a 6. Those are your two solutions, 0 and 6. But now we got to go back to our equation to see what works. And 0 does not work. 8 over 0 will not be allowed. So we can't say that 0 works. Oops. Okay, so we're going to have to cross out the 0. And 6 is our only solution then. But 6 does work. All right, we're going to skip 12 since we've already done tons of work on there. Let's do 13. Describe the error. And it's a pretty simple error. Their common denominator was an x by everything and a 2 by everything. And what they forgot was this last part. They forgot to multiply the 1 times the 2x. So got to multiply everything by the common denominator. That was their mistake. All right, there's 7.5a. So your job is to do 7.5b. I will let you cross out 14. And I'll let you cross out, let's go with 10 and 11 because they're kind of long ones. The rest of them are a lot easier. All right, so you can cross out those and then just do the puzzle. All right, good luck. Stay focused. Work hard. You got this.